Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video and leaving such thoughtful comments. Wishing everyone lots of health and peace. Early in the morning, faint sunlight pierced through the gaps in the tattered bamboo curtain, waking Diep from a restless dream of freedom. She shivered slightly, her dark-circled eyes weary from lack of sleep, quickly slipping on her faded white shirt and wrapping a vibrant scarf around her head, the only remnant of her youthful spirit. The distant crowing of roosters blended with her mother-in-law's harsh shouts from the kitchen. "Diep, are you still lying there? Go water the garden now, or don't even think about smelling rice today." Overwhelmed, Diep walked barefoot on the cold earth, clutching a bucket and old watering can, silently resentful but too afraid to resist. The vegetable garden on the hillside glowed green, but today's morning dew felt heavier, as if bearing the weight of her sorrow. Diep diligently watered each row, sweat dripping down her forehead, her calloused hands covered in soil. In a quiet moment, she gazed toward the distant mountain, where the abandoned house James, the mysterious man who had entered her life, had gifted her as a vague promise. But thinking of James, her heart tightened, for she knew his current plight. A once wealthy man now destitute after his family's bankruptcy. After finishing, she hurried back, her steps heavy, knowing her mother-in-law was waiting to pile on more burdens. Her mother-in-law's voice thundered. "Done watering? Hurry and pick the tomatoes, take them to the market for money, or don't dream of eating or drinking today." Diep could only lower her head, her frail shoulders trembling under the crushing pressure, but in her heart, the image of the abandoned house flickered, a rare light in her dark life. The wind rustled through the garden, whispering of her extravagant dreams, but she knew survival meant enduring. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from the distant forest. A footstep? Or just the hallucination of an exhausted woman? Diep turned, her heart racing, but saw only thick darkness, leaving an unsettling feeling that piqued viewers' curiosity about what awaited her next. While Diep toiled in the garden, her husband Nam snored loudly on the cluttered bed, his breath reeking of alcohol from the previous night. Sunlight streamed through the window and Nam rolled awake, his bloodshot eyes hazy, his mind numb. He threw on his worn, tattered shirt, skipping washing his face, muttering bitterly, "Where's Diep? What's she doing instead of cooking for me?" But without waiting for an answer, Nam stumbled outside, spotting his mother counting coins on the threshold, her face as cold as stone. He sneered, saying, "I'm heading out for a drink, I'll deal with it later." His mother nodded, her sharp eyes like daggers, long accustomed to her son's laziness. Nam staggered down the village path, clutching a cheap bottle of liquor bought from a corner shop. He met his drunk buddies and they continued drinking under an ancient tree, their laughter and curses echoing across the peaceful fields. The alcohol fueled Nam's aggression, his heart filled only with irresponsibility and contempt for Diep. He described his wife as a burden, drawing raucous laughter and encouragement from his friends, pushing him deeper into cruelty. Viewers felt the stark contrast between Diep's hard work and Nam's moral decay, building a tense atmosphere hinting at impending tragedy. As the bottle emptied, Nam smashed it on the ground, the shattering sound like a declaration of destruction in their fragile family. He stumbled home, eyes blazing red, ready to unleash his anger on anyone, especially Diep, whom he saw as an enemy for her endurance. The harsh midday sun beat down on his face, but his gaze was icy, foretelling the storm about to hit. Suddenly, a shadowy figure slipped past the corner of the road. Who was it? Nam squinted, but only darkness loomed, sending a chill down his spine despite the alcohol, leaving viewers curious about the lurking mystery. Diep carried a basket of ripe, red tomatoes, walking over 2 kilometers to the village market, each step heavy with the weight of her life's sorrows. The tomatoes gleamed, fragrant and glossy, but the burden on her shoulders was greater than the basket. Pressure from her mother-in-law, abuse from Nam, and a vague longing for James. At the market, she called out softly but persistently, "Anyone buying tomatoes? Homegrown, very clean." After struggling, she sold nearly all, tucking the meager earnings into her pocket, her heart heavy yet glimmering with hope. She couldn't rest, her mind racing to the abandoned house in the forest, where James had gifted her a mysterious token after their fateful encounter. She silently trekked up the mountain, her steps dragging with memories of James's warm smile, though she now knew he suffered, his family bankrupt and stripped of all wealth. The small wooden house nestled in the woods, covered in fallen leaves, felt today like a sanctuary for her soul. She swept, scrubbed, and tidied with her remaining strength, searching for a shred of light in her dark existence. Before leaving, she left 2 ripe tomatoes on the wooden table, a silent mark of love for James, but also a fragile link between them. As she disappeared, James arrived, his eyes wide with shock, his heart aching from missing the woman he longed for. The forest wind carried the scent of earth and leaves, whispering of their twisted fates. But then a strange noise erupted from the forest's edge, the crunch of dry leaves? Or someone watching? James spun around, but only darkness enveloped him, sending a shiver down his spine and leaving viewers breathless, wondering if a dark secret was about to unfold, connecting to Diep in terrifying ways. Diep returned home drenched in sweat, her hands still smelling of soil and tomatoes. Her mother-in-law, with a face as cold as ice, blocked the door, her voice sharp as a blade. "Where's the money from the tomatoes? Hand it over. I'll keep it for the afternoon market. Don't you dare hide anything." Diep silently handed over the paltry sum, her heart aching, but before she could catch her breath, Nom, her husband, stumbled in, reeking of alcohol, eyes bloodshot, roaring, "Where've you been? Get in the room now, I want a child." Diep recoiled, trembling. "I'm exhausted, you're drunk, let's do it another day." But Nom ignored her, lunging to grab her collar, his rough fingers tightening until she choked. Her mother-in-law stood by, not intervening but shouting with disdain, "What kind of daughter-in-law are you, too lazy to bear a child for this family? Beat her, Nom. She doesn't know her place." Nom swung his fists, the thuds against the floor echoing painfully as Diep sobbed, too afraid to fight back, pleading, "Please, mother, I just need a moment to rest." But her mother-in-law turned away coldly, ordering, "No dinner tonight, starve so you learn your lesson." Diep's cries mingled with the cold night wind, creating a tragic symphony in the small house. Her mother-in-law grumbled and left, leaving Diep alone, clutching her bruised body, tears blurring her vision, but deep down, the image of the abandoned house and James burned like a flickering flame of hope. The dark room held only her huddled figure, a symbol of utter endurance, leaving viewers breathless amid the brutal tragedy. Suddenly, a soft tap echoed from the back door. Who was outside? Diep jolted, her heart pounding, but when she opened it, she saw only impenetrable darkness, planting a vague dread that made viewers wonder who was lurking and what shocking twist awaited next. As Diep collapsed back against the wall, a faint, unfamiliar scent wafted through the air, metallic like blood, or just the lingering smell of the tomatoes. Her mind raced with fear, wondering if someone had been watching her suffering, perhaps the same shadowy figure from the forest. The silence grew oppressive, broken only by the distant howl of a dog, which sounded eerily human, sending chills down her spine. She whispered James's name into the void, her voice trembling, as if he could somehow hear her plea across the miles. But the darkness swallowed her words, leaving her more isolated than ever, fueling viewers' curiosity about a potential savior, or a new threat, lurking just beyond her reach. The night deepened and Diep's thoughts spiraled to a chilling realization. What if the tapping wasn't accidental but a warning? Her eyes darted to the window where a flicker of movement caught her gaze, a silhouette vanishing into the night. Was it James or someone far more dangerous? The unanswered question hung in the air, gripping viewers with suspense and driving them to wonder what terrifying secret might unravel in the next moment. On the mountain ridge, James stood frozen before the abandoned house, clutching the 2 tomatoes Diep had left, his heart heavy from missing her. But his sorrow wasn't just from unrequited love for Diep. It stemmed from his family's catastrophe. Just months ago, his family's prosperous business, a wealthy entrepreneur's empire, had gone bankrupt due to failed investments, leaving him penniless and buried in debt. His eyes were tormented, his voice faltering. "Diep, where are you? I've lost everything, you're my only hope." But only the wind howling through the forest answered. The pain of love, combined with financial ruin, left James directionless. He descended to the village, heading to the small tavern where Nom often drank, but he drank alone, the bottle emptying, the alcohol unable to numb his loneliness. The noisy laughter around him only deepened his isolation, like a stranger in a familiar world. He recalled his family's golden days, now reduced to debt and scorn from former sycophants. Finally, the liquor overwhelmed him, and he collapsed unconscious by the roadside, his white shirt now smeared with mud, a symbol of his shattered life. A passerby stumbled upon him, calling for help, but when James awoke, he felt hollow. Lying on the cold ground, he gripped the tomatoes tightly, tears silently falling, confessing his failures in love and life. But then a shadowy figure stood silently in the distance, watching. Who was it? James squinted, but darkness swallowed the shape, sending a chill through him and leaving viewers tense, wondering if a dark secret was lurking, tied to Diep in a terrifying way that hinted at an explosive revelation to come. As James struggled to his feet, a crumpled letter fell from his pocket. A debt notice threatening dire consequences if unpaid, signed with a cryptic symbol that sent a shiver down his spine. Could this be linked to the shadowy figure? Or a new enemy from his past, exploiting his downfall? He stumbled toward the house, the tomatoes slipping from his grasp, rolling into the darkness, as if symbolizing his fading hope. A sudden crack of a branch snapped in the forest and James froze. Someone was near, their breath audible in the stillness, but when he turned, no one was there, only the eerie silence of the night. The weight of his losses crashed over him, but a strange determination ignited in his chest. Diep was his last chance at redemption, yet a growing dread whispered that their reunion might bring more danger than salvation. Viewers were left on edge, wondering if the shadowy figure was stalking him, or if Diep's own peril would intersect with this ominous presence, setting the stage for a heart-pounding confrontation in the next scene. Diep huddled in a corner of the room, her stomach growling with hunger, her body aching from Nam's beating. Her mother-in-law stood at the door, her voice dripping with contempt. "Your life's this good already. Don't even dream of anything else, especially that James." Diep wept silently, but deep within, hope for the abandoned house and James, the only one who'd ever brought her light, still burned, though she knew he too was now in despair. Night fell, and she gazed out the window at the faint moonlight, a reminder of the freedom she craved but could barely imagine. Meanwhile, James awoke by the roadside, saved by a passerby, but his heart still yearned for Diep. He knew he'd lost everything: family, fortune, and possibly love. Diep, despite her pain, resolved to escape this suffocating home soon, heading to the forest house where she believed James would wait, even though he was now broken by life. The night wind howled, whispering of their twisted fates but also urging them toward each other. The story closed on a tense climax, leaving viewers with mixed emotions: pain, empathy, and a glimmer of hope for Diep and James, though their path forward remained uncertain. Under the dim moonlight, the silhouettes of these two lonely souls merged into the night, awaiting a miracle to reunite them. But suddenly a distant cry echoed from the forest. A familiar sound, like James's voice, or just Diep's hallucination. Viewers held their breath, curious whether these two fates would truly converge, or if a horrifying secret was poised to erupt at the next turn, driving suspense for what might follow. As Diep whispered James's name again, a blood-red stain appeared on the floor near her. A drop of something unknown, seeping from under the door, chilling her to the bone. She crawled toward it, trembling, but the stain vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving her questioning her sanity. Was it blood, a warning, or a cruel trick of the mind? Her eyes darted to the window again, where the silhouette reappeared, now holding something glinting in the moonlight. A knife? A key? She stifled a scream, her mind racing with terror. But the figure vanished, leaving only the sound of footsteps fading into the night. Meanwhile, James, clutching the debt notice, felt a cold hand grip his shoulder in the darkness. Whose touch was it, and what did it mean for their fragile hope? The tension reached its peak, with viewers gripped by unanswered questions. Would Diep escape her tormentors, or would the mysterious presence seal her fate? Could James overcome his despair and find her, or was their reunion doomed by the sinister forces closing in? The night stretched on, thick with dread, as both characters teetered on the edge of salvation or destruction, leaving audiences desperate to know what catastrophic twist awaited in the next chapter.
Câu chuyện gì đấy chẳng hạn.
Câu chuyện gì? Sao chuyện đọc